maybe it's time that we start to realize that we are the most intelligent and impressive machines in the universe that we know. And so, as we make other machines that are similarly impressive, they're going to be similarly flawed because we make them,
Makes
right?
sense.
Especially AI. I mean, we're basically trying to build a computer to be like a human, and then we're shocked that it's not perfect. Like, I'm not shocked my
Well,
neighbor's not perfect, right? I don't pretend like, oh, I made a child and now the child has so many flaws. Oh my God, what's going on? Like,
welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I am Sally Taylor. This is my witty brother, John Daniels, and we are here to talk about the pros and cons of artificial intelligence. It is a human invention that is making giant changes to the world and the way that we function.
yeah.
John, let me start by saying you are the first person in our family that played with AI. You were sharing AI generated pictures before I really had a
Oh yeah.
clue
Yeah.
what it was. So you've been a very early user of AI.
That was the
How
first version of Stable Diffusion, I think it was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, how has it altered the way that you're working these days?
It's actually kind of helped me a lot. I'm self-taught in a lot of things, including programming, and I've been using like Stack Overflow, which is a website for it's like a question and answer website. Think like Quora, right? Quora.com. But then for people who are into programming or, various technical fields. And it's full of people who are just complete jerks all the time. Like they can't help themselves. They they get on these power trips and just somebody asks a question and they fall over themselves being jerks. And it's terrible. I hate asking questions on there. I don't even like reading questions on there to try to get help. But when you're teaching yourself how to program, you run into a lot of situations where you need help. And
Right.
so I use ChatGPT as like my mentor to teach me the things I don't know. I can just ask like, what's a good way to do this? And then it can give me some ideas. Um, and then I can also use it as a way of just like, okay, well, I need this function made and I want it to do this and this and this. And I could do it myself, but it's so much faster if I just briefly describe what I want the inputs and outputs to be and what type of a function I need it to be. And then ChatGPT just writes it all out there. And even if there's a couple mistakes, like I'm not an idiot. I can see the mistakes and I can fix them myself, right? So it's a
Good.
wonderful tool. It's a wonderful tool just to make everything faster. And when I don't know something, I can describe what I'm looking for, and ChatGPT will tell me all these wonderful things that I didn't know that I can then go and research and like learn more about. But I didn't even know what question to ask before, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love it for that reason as well.
exactly.
Just with regard to, thinking about any given topic, but having
Mm,
questions around that topic. But
mm.
here's where I have a little bit of concern is how many people want the questions rather
Uh-huh.
than just the answer and will
Yeah,
trust that answer fully. So you said something about I'll have it, create these functions for me, but I can see the mistakes.
right.
So that means it's common for there to be mistakes. That it happens at least
Yes,
if not
yes,
all the time, regularly enough that it could be
yes,
problematic.
yes. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this. Sometimes I recognize these mistakes as being the nature of software and libraries for programming is that these things are constantly being updated and changed. And so what ChatGPT has been trained on may be older than what I have installed on my computer. And so when I'm asking for some program to be some portion of a program to be written for me, then it may be basing that information on a version of this library that's older than what I'm currently trying to use. And when it's things for some, like there's a type of microcontroller, which is like a small computer. It's called the ESP32. And so this library of basically how this thing works has been changing so fast. Like it was version 1, then it was version 3, then it was version 5, and it was like boom, 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 like within a year. So many changes so fast that of course it's going to have, I think, a little bit of trouble trying to keep up with these changes. And so you have to understand just a bare minimum of how this program is trying to work. And I've said it myself, and I've seen a lot of people say it as well. And it was more true in the past, and it's less true now. But basically, it's kind of like it's trying to predict the most common next word, right? Like the most likely possible next word in the sentence that it's making. And so that's basically true, but it's not just sheer probability of the next most likely word. I mean, because there's a whole lot of context that's involved as well, that the context has to match as well. And so the very next most likely word is going to be a very, very small selection of words, right? For any given context. And the more complex the context becomes, as you have a conversation with AI, then that context is narrowed down and narrowed down and narrowed down. And I typically will preface any question that I have with a block of context. Here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm trying to do, and here's what I would like to use to accomplish this. So here's my question. How can I do this? What do I need to learn about? These are the kinds of things that I talk about with AI when I'm trying to get an answer. You gotta really put a lot of information in so you get a very specific and more correct answer back.
That makes good sense. And obviously, like I said, you were an early user. So you've been
Mhm.
actively playing with this tool now for a while and
Yeah,
finding its idiosyncrasies and really being able to figure out how to make it work well for you, which
right,
is
right.
again a
It
huge
takes
benefit,
time.
right? But
Yeah.
it does make your work faster. What about though when people use chat gpt or any other ai program to
Mm.
basically do work that they don't have any expertise around,
Yeah.
you
That's
know?
not a very that's not a very good idea. Simply because like it's not perfect. And so
Right.
if you're going to put absolute trust into it, you're going to be you're not going to have a good time. You're going to be disappointed a lot
Yeah.
because you don't know what the answer should look like, then you're not going to know when it looks wrong.
Yeah.
And like I have seen these disclaimers like you shouldn't just take chat gpt at its word. It can make mistakes. You should always verify. And I'm thinking, well, because I mostly use it for programming, everything has to go through a compiler. If the program doesn't compiles, there's a problem, right? And so I don't typically just immediately hit compile after I get something from ChatGPT. I look at it and I make sure that it's using all the variables that I told it I wanted it to use, and I try to make sure that it's doing what I want it to do. And then I'll compile it after I've maybe tweaked it a little bit. And if I'm still having trouble, there's something that is maybe slightly outside of the scope of my knowledge, then I'll have to study that and fix it, right? Or you can also ask ChatGPT. You can tell ChatGPT the error that comes back from the compiler. And then ChatGPT will say, oh, well, this error typically involves this and this and this. Let me see if I can fix that. And it'll try to fix it for you. And so, I mean, you don't even really have to know that much if you can just copy and paste the errors from the compiler. But this is very specific to programming. Like programming is kind of automatically error checking for you, right? If it's not a good program, it's just not going to run. And so that's something that you're kind of forced to do, right? But if
Right.
in other areas where that maybe not the case, then you could very easily make yourself look like a fool because you
Right.
haven't done your due diligence.
Right.
Yeah.
And so let me ask you this, because this is very much a teacher question, because that's my background, is being a teacher. Do we lose the creation of experts
No,
because they're doing less? Does
no.
that make sense? You don't
Yeah,
think that happens? See, I worry about that. To me, that's one of the
no.
possible repercussions.
I've gotten better at programming because of Chat GPT. I've
Oh,
gotten
that's
better.
good to know.
There's no
Okay,
doubt
good.
about it. Yeah. I've I had never heard of vectors in C++, and I was trying to do some stuff with arrays, and ChatGPT is like, you could use it a vector. I was like, I don't know what that is. What's that? And so ChatGPT starts to teach me about what a vector is and how to use them. And so I don't think, like, if you're a person who's trying to use it as a tool and not as a way to cheat your way through life, it's gonna make you better. It's not
Right.
going to make you worse.
Right. Well, and a lot of
Yeah.
teachers, though, are very concerned about kids or young adults or whoever it is they happen to be,
Yeah.
teaching, that they do or are starting to use it to cheat their way through life. Right.
Yes.
They're
Okay. So these people have existed for forever. So not so very long ago, Wikipedia was a big thing. And where a big thing where that students were just copying, pasting Wikipedia articles as their essays, right?
Yeah.
And teachers went into this big thing about how you can't trust Wikipedia. It's full of lies. Anybody can edit it, and you can't trust anything, and you're gonna be wrong. And so students are then, I've heard our nieces parroting the words of their lazy teachers who can't be bothered to type something into Google and see if it was a copied word for word from the internet. Oh, you can't trust Wikipedia. It's full of lies, blah, 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 blah. Wikipedia is a wonderful resource. I donate
I
money to
use it.
Wikipedia. Wikipedia
Yeah.
is something that we need to keep around. This is a wonderful source of information on almost every topic that's freely available to the world. So I cannot say that Wikipedia is full of lies. There may be some mistakes here and there, but generally it's well edited, as well as any encyclopedia, I would say. And I think that basically AI is kind of falling into the same trap, I guess. It's not even really a trap. It's just people are talking against it from a teacher perspective in an effort to try to make sure that the students are not abusing it, right?
Right.
And so, but I think the problem is the teachers don't understand it. They don't know how to teach it as a tool. And so we have entire generations of people now who have missed out on using Wikipedia as a tool because they were never taught how to use Wikipedia as a tool as opposed to using it as a cheating source. And so now we're
Right.
going to have the same thing happen with AI, where it could be a tool that can make people more intelligent and more productive. And we're going to miss out on that because the teachers don't know how to teach it. And so because they don't know how to teach it, they just default to saying, don't use it, right?
Right.
Same with in math. Don't use calculators. You have to show your work. This is bullshit. I don't do any of that nowadays. I do it all in Excel, or I do it all on a calculator, or I just make a program and the computer does it all for me. I don't have to show any work. This is
Right.
ridiculous.
Well, but that's why I wonder if we're going to lose expertise, because I mean, you learn to do the math that you now use the calculator to do faster for you, right? But
Well,
how typical are you, John? Right? How
yeah.
typical are you? You're a curious person who soaks up learning,
We
right?
have to like instill this into people, right?
I
Let's make people
agree.
curious.
That's the problem with
Let's,
education. I'm the first to
yes,
say our education is screwed up.
yes, it is. Let's stop telling them, don't do this. Let's tell them, hey, why don't you explore this? Why don't you try it out?
Right. Well, that's the problem with education. We are still producing factory workers
Yeah.
as opposed to curious people.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I feel like we beat the curiosity out of kids in our public
Yeah.
education system. But that's a whole separate topic. Maybe one day we'll talk about education more, John,
You're
because
right.
I'm with you on that.
Yep.
In fact, I don't teach in public school anymore because of my
Yeah.
frustration around
I
all of
understand
that.
that. I understand that.
So let me ask you some other concerns that have been come up, because I'm going to be the naysayer on this. You're the pro, I'm the con. How about
Okay.
we'll keep
Sounds
it that
good.
way.
Yeah.
I'll ask these sort of concerning questions. AI is growing exponentially.
Hmm.
It changes so fast. Are we as human beings able to keep up with the change? I have some concerns that as typically humans are resistant to change because they like to stick with what they know.
Yeah.
And so the idea that the world is changing faster than we as a species, of course, individuals can be, very individual and can
Yes.
make
And
those adjustments
species
sometimes
evolve extremely slowly.
slowly, right? Can we
Yes.
as a species keep up with these technological changes?
I think that we can, for now. I haven't seen AI doing anything that a human can't do yet. So far, I think we're still okay. The problem is like, are we okay as individuals or are we okay as as a general population? And as a general population, I think we're not okay simply because, as we already discussed, there's a problem with education and there's lots of problems. And we tend to fall into the same cycles of mistakes as a species. Like we keep doing the same things over and over in new arenas. Like we can't seem to quite understand that equality means equal rights for everyone, right? We keep wanting to
Exactly.
say well, these people don't get equality for some reason that I can't quite explain. like how does it we haven't figured out equality yet, right? So when
It's all the
AI
ways
comes
we
along,
divide ourselves. Oh,
I
sorry.
know
Go
no,
ahead.
you're right. And it's so dumb. But when actually like a general artificial intelligence comes along and we now have this non-human intelligence, I fear we're going to just do the same thing that we've always done. We're just going to we'll say, well, let's turn it off, right? And that's basically killing it. And so we're
Mhm.
just going to immediately start committing genocide against a new intelligent being because we don't understand it. Of course we are. Like that's definitely what we're going to do. We're going to cause the AI war, right? If there ever is an AI war, it's going to be because humans have caused it. Because I feel like AI is not going to do anything to try to hurt people, but it might try to defend itself.
I mean,
I,
that's a possibility. There have been
I can
movies
feel this.
created around that idea, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we've had a lot of movies that have actually dealt with an artificial intelligence in the future. And some of
yeah,
those movies are old movies now. Even back then, they addressed concerns around the problem of technology outstripping human capacity
yeah,
to
yeah,
adjust and to
yeah.
change, and then
Right.
allowing that system to make decisions for us that often harm us in the end.
Yes.
So
Well, I
we've
I don't
had
know.
this we've had this bad dream instilled in us for some decades before it actually came to fruition. I mean, AI is a
Yeah.
real thing and in the world today. And
Yes.
you're right, it is a tool. And as
Yeah.
long as we treat it like a tool, we're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But as if we start to treat it as the end all be all of, you know, human salvation,
Right.
we might have some problems with it.
I
Uh,
wonder though. I don't know. In a lot of ways, I feel like I would rather have an AI judge in front of a court of law, right? There's the possibility that it might misremember the law or make up a new law if we're using the current generation of AI, right? But you see the same thing with people, right?
Sure.
there and there are extremely prejudiced judges and law enforcement officials out there making terrible decisions, not simply as a mistake, but just because they're prejudiced. And
Right.
so I feel like it could do a much better job than people in providing equal access to equality. Or there are clear examples of AI having difficulty recognizing features of non-Caucasian faces, right? Due to the training data. Like, this is something that's been acknowledged. And this is, I think, again, it's due to the training data. If we train the AI on a, a world of images instead of just a very small sliver of images, it'll do better. I feel like AI might learn in very similar ways to people. We learn based on our experiences and on patterns that we recognize in life. And so if we're the same thing happens with people. We have like kind of like racial blindness, right? White people don't recognize the facial features of non-white people as well as they do other white people, right? And it happens in all the races. And it's happening the same way with AI. I think it's just a lack of exposure, and it's that lack of the patterns, the training data, right? Humans are learning in the same way. Like, we learn in a very similar way. We respond in very similar ways. It's all based on experience. It's based on what is put into our database of our mind, the programming that we has been fed into us by those who are raising us or slash training us, and we we typically output the most likely thing that we should output, right? I mean, we're not making new works of art every sentence that we utter, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're stringing
Yes,
words together.
that's true. But let me ask you, one concern that I have
Mm,
is that AI also, I say one concern, there's all kinds of concerns that a lot of people have. But
mm,
with AI, it doesn't have the capacity for human emotion. And so
mm,
context around emotion. So when
mhm,
you talk about it, maybe being a judge,
mhm.
in a court of law
Yeah,
using AI for that, is
yeah.
it going to stick to just fact without context of human motivation, human emotion? Because that
Mm.
seems to be the one place where AI is not actually able to truly replicate human experience.
Yeah.
How do you
Well,
see that happening?
from my conversations with ChatGPT in particular, I feel like I know that it doesn't understand in the way that we understand, but it can actually respond while keeping these things in mind, I guess, keeping them within the scope of the context of the response. Because maybe I need to read more about this, but I feel like it has a certain amount of ability to respond with it's hard to put into words. It's something that I've kind of picked up here and there, and I'm kind of forming it still in my mind as to what's
Yeah.
happening.
Well, I'm wondering if mimicry is kind of a appropriate term to use.
Possibly, possibly. But yes, but then are we not all just mimicking being human?
Good question. That's a really good question. And I don't know that I have an answer for that one,
I mean,
but
you
I
look at different
feel like that,
cultures and they have very
yeah,
different responses to different stimuli,
true, true.
right?
But we can also see another human being having, a deep emotional experience, and
Yeah,
we can relate and we can connect to
yeah.
it.
If you were to see
So,
AI have a deeply emotional experience would you be able to relate to it?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think I'll be
Uh,
able to.
what would it look like? I mean,
An intelligent individual speaking to another intelligent individual, I think.
so do you give AI the benefit of consciousness then?
I don't think it is currently conscious. However, it might still already be a little bit sentient.
That's an interesting way to put that.
Like, cause so I sometimes think about like governments and very, very large social organizations as being some sort of an intelligent being. There's this drive for self-preservation that extends far, far, far beyond the individual cells, right? You can easily just take any political party. Let's talk about Democrats for a second. The Democratic Party is trying to survive at a scope that is beyond Nancy Pelosi, for example, right?
Yep.
It's kind of its own entity.
Mhm.
And religions are the same way. You have all these little tiny individual people that are building up this larger organism that wants to continue and survive, and it has its own kind of motivations, and it kind of doesn't really care what happens to the individual little sections as long as it keeps going. This happens in all kinds of things, and I think it kind of happens to the internet in general as well. And so, are these things conscious? Perhaps not. I don't know that these large organizations of individuals are thinking as a whole, but it does seem to have some type of self-preservation motivation, some ability to control its own future, right? I
To
think.
some degree, but is it really just individual humans collaboratively working together to maintain power?
Mhm.
Because with power comes
Okay,
safety.
but how are we to say that this is not a separate entity? Because maybe the cells are made up of different organelles that were originally some, bacteria that organize themselves in order to maintain power over their environment. And I mean, maybe not consciously, but they did, right? And they became more complex organisms. And now here we are. We're just the next evolution of that. Now we're just tiny, tiny little cells, and yet the ones that are in our head are working together in such a way that now we think we're somebody else. Like I'm my own little network and you're your own little network. And now we're talking about other networks. And right?
Yeah.
So I
So
have very deep and profound, I feel, thoughts on AI, and I think AI is all right. I am not anti-AI.
for the
I'm
most part, you
happy.
see it as pro.
I'm very pro. I'm happy that it's coming about, and I hope that we can treat it with the same respect that we treat each other, and I hope that we can start treating each other with better respect too, because we still can't quite figure out that humans are humans, and if we all have equality, then we all have to have equal rights, and we can't to pretend that
But are
some
you
people are less human.
right? Are
Yeah,
you giving AI though that human benefit of respect? I mean, yes, we can respect a lot of things that are
Of course
not
I think I
human.
am. Yes, because
Yeah.
I do. I respect nature. I respect wildlife. I try to respect as much as I can, right?
Right. So, but you're giving a human creation, being
Yes.
AI, that same designation as nature.
Why not? Aren't we part of
Well,
nature?
it's a good
Aren't
question, and we
aren't the
created
things that
it,
we
right?
build? I mean, if ants build an ant colony, is that not nature?
Yeah.
Just because they dug the holes, is it suddenly not nature? We see it as nature, right? And we are part of nature. We create something that's natural. It's natural for us to want to create this. It's natural that it exists on our planet. It is part of nature.
I don't know that I have an opinion on that yet, John. I haven't wrapped my head around it enough to have given
Yeah.
it full thought. But that's a really interesting perspective. I, I like it. I just don't know yet if I agree with it. I have to think about it more.
Well, you keep thinking
Uh,
about it. You'll
it is
probably end up
such a
agreeing.
big topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then we've got other issues like will it displace a lot of people from their jobs because it's now
Oh,
doing work that humans
yes.
did? And
Yes, yes, yes. And computers were going to do the same thing. And I
of
mean,
course,
this is something that we always say that people are going to lose their jobs. And it's because we don't want to adjust. We don't want to
yes.
try to figure out what are the next jobs. It's going to make a bunch
Right.
of jobs. So what are the jobs it's going to make? And then like the jobs that we lose, maybe they're not really jobs that people are so super interested in anyway, right? Otherwise, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be trying to get rid of them. Like if
Yeah.
it was a job that people loved, we'd be fighting to keep doing it. And you wouldn't even have to fight. You just keep doing it and people would keep paying
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
agree with you on that. I always struggle with somebody saying, "Oh, I'm a factory worker and I've
Mm.
lost my job and now I'm jobless and I can't find another job. There are no more jobs for me." Well,
Yeah.
that might mean you need to rethink what your job is. You're
Yeah.
maybe not a factory worker, right?
Right. Right.
Maybe your next iteration is going back to school and, learning to code
Yeah.
or learning
Yeah.
to become
Learn
an
something else.
EMT or whatever it
Or
is. Right.
or just learn how to pivot, right? Just take your
Right.
skills that you have developed working in the factory, which are many. I've worked in factories.
Yeah.
I'm a designer now, and but I work at a factory designing things.
Right.
So
Right.
like I like factory work. It's sometimes it's very relaxing to just like sit and put something together for an hour instead of having to think about what I'm doing. It's wonderful. And there are skills that you pick up by doing factory work that can be applied to many other areas, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you just have to stop trying to restrict yourself, right? Like we heard growing up, I know I did anyways, you can be anything you want to be. You can be president, you can be a doctor, you can do whatever you want. And I believed it when I was young. And then I started to think it wasn't true. And I'd heard other people who were also saying that we got to stop telling people this because it's not true and not everybody can do anything. And then later, more recent to now, I've realized that actually it is true. You can do anything you want to do. And it all comes down to motivation. And it's not 100% motivation, but it kind of also is. Like you have to put yourself into that environment, right? If you want to be a designer, kind of have to start being a designer, right? You have to read about design and you have to hang out with people who are designing things and because that's where you're going to learn, right? Talking with other people and studying, this is how you become that new thing. And so if you want to be a programmer, then that's what you need to start doing. And you need to start talking to people who are interested in it. You need to start reading about it and you need to start trying it. And it's just taking that first step. If you want to do it, try it out, right? And maybe you're going to figure out right away that, ooh, I'm not sure I do really want to do this. And it's more than just like because it's a challenge, right? There's always a challenge. You have to be willing to keep trying.
Of course, we share a lot of genes. And so
Mhm.
I'm in full agreement with you on these things, John.
Mhm.
Full, because I'm a very curious person. I love to learn. I move on to the next thing when something else goes away with
Yeah,
ease.
yeah.
But I find that's not as common as we might like for it to be
No, I
in
understand.
humanity.
But I think it's just basically, but it's a learned response though, I think. Of course, there are people who have like serious physiological difficulties, right? Like
Right.
challenges that are going to make things extremely difficult for them. For me, I gave up on being an astronaut because I got too tall, right? And at that point in time, like
Right.
you couldn't be an astronaut if you were like 6 foot tall. So I was like,
Right.
yeah, okay, well, that's just it's never going to happen. Like they don't build things big enough for me to be an astronaut. So It's never going
Yeah,
to
can't
happen.
even be a fighter. Your eyesight might have been a problem too,
Oh
John. How
yes,
good are
no,
your
no,
eyes?
definitely. No, they're terrible. They're terrible. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would also would have been a big problem.
Yeah.
So like there are certain things that maybe we cannot always do, at least not currently. I
Right.
imagine a future where spaceships are built for tall people as well, and you don't have to
Right.
have good eyesight because we have cameras and stuff that
Mhm.
can see better anyway.
Okay.
So maybe one day.
I did see a meme that hit me really strongly, I don't know, several weeks ago, and it said something along the idea of, I want AI to do my dishes and my laundry, not create my art and write my poetry, you know?
Yes, yes,
And there's
yes, yes.
something to be said for that.
No, there's definitely there is. And I think the problem is that AI is doing what's easiest first. It's really hard to do dishes. We have to move so many fingers and stuff just to
Yeah.
pick up a plate. And then to like know that, okay, this plate has dirt on it here, here, and here. We're using our eyes, we're using senses, that computers just don't have.
Yeah.
But you ask a computer to string some words together. Look, computers have been based on words for a very long time, right? Like this is easy for computers to do. So that's the problem. Right now, we're asking computers to do the things that are easy for computers to do, which is making pixels on a screen in various shapes. And those shapes might be words, and they might be artistic displays that we then go and use a printer to print out and to make it into a physical media. But it's essentially the same type of thing for a computer. It's just dots on a screen. And but then interacting with the real physical world and moving a variety of motors in a very precise, like coordinated manner in order to achieve some physical skill in the real world, that's very, very, very difficult. And we just haven't been at it long enough, I think, for
Right.
it to be as easy a task to accomplish as writing some poetry. Like we told it all of our wonderful poetry that humans have made. And then we say, this is what good poetry looks like. Can you do something kind of like this? And it's like, yeah, it can do something kind of like that, right?
Right.
And
Or
so,
even in the style of, a given
exactly,
known artist from
exactly.
history.
And so typically, if you kind of understand computers and you kind of understand art, you can see the difference, right? You can say, oh, okay,
Yes.
this is
Well,
clearly
oh,
AI.
but here's the thing, John.
Mm.
This
I'm
is
sure
where
it's getting
I
better, right?
yeah,
It's getting
well,
better.
it is getting better, but
Mm.
you are probably familiar with the little AI image of a peacock that went around for a while. And
Maybe I'm
I would
not.
say, oh, maybe not. Okay, well, I would say when I was seeing this thing get passed around social media,
Mm.
90% of the people were saying, "Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, nature is so wonderful. Oh, I can't believe it's so cute." And then 10% of the people would say, "That's not a baby peacock. They look nothing like that." Right?
Right.
And so
Okay.
it fooled the majority of people.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
couldn't look at it and go, "Oh, that's AI." I think slowly people are getting better at it, but people who've never left a city and have never
Yeah.
seen a cow in
Right.
life,
Right.
certainly can't pick out a real baby peacock from an AI generated one
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
looks
That's true.
almost
But like,
photographic.
I've never seen Will Smith eat spaghetti, but when I saw that video, I
Oh,
knew
I
that wasn't Will
haven't seen
Smith.
that. Okay. I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Well, and,
Well, you
and
should
that's
check
the
that one
other
out.
thing. So AI is being used to recreate, younger faces on actors and take
Yes.
somebody's voice
Yeah.
and put it onto their ad. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, Tom Hanks, but Tom
Yeah.
Hanks had nothing to do with it, never got paid for it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
using his voice and his image to sell their
Hmm.
product.
Yeah.
There are some copyright and infringement issues around AI as well. In essence, it's breaking all copyright rules in
Yeah. Well,
reality.
I don't feel very strongly about copyright rules. I think they're kind of just trash anyway. So I
Well, but
don't
what if that's your,
feel
but
like,
what if your creative output is your income, you know?
okay,
And that's essentially being stolen from you. It's a gray area, isn't it?
I still feel like if being creative is your way of surviving, you can survive with being creative. This banana duct taped to a wall recently sold for
Oh
millions
God.
of dollars,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
There
it's the
were
concept. That's concept art.
yes, yes.
And somebody was willing to pay for
You're
it.
right, right. So, and then you have people who are on the street who are like making physical pieces of art that they physically assign their name to. But if you're just selling digital copies is not very valuable.
To get back to AI real quickly,
Yeah,
I do agree with you that it is going to be a big help to humanity.
yeah.
I do think it is changing faster than we might have the capacity to change ourselves.
I
Do
think
we
it's
need to
gonna.
slow it down? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. There's no way to slow it down. You can't control anything these days. Like everybody wants to control stuff. I find that this is something that people are just really, really into, and I don't quite understand it myself because I'm not into it myself. But people really want to put rules on everything, and the rules are not for like the good of the thing that they're putting the rules on. The rules are for the good of themselves, and so there's no way to slow anything down with the internet around anymore because even if we were to say, okay, we're going to stop all AI progress right now and we're not going to do it anymore, there's going to be people in their basement, people like me who, I've got computers. I know how to program. I can do whatever I want to do. If I share it, well, then maybe somebody can say, hey, look, this guy is spreading this around. But if I don't do that, right, then who knows? And so we'll have a lot of people who are just like developing it on their own. And then we'll have probably a few dozen general AIs suddenly pop up around the world and nobody will know about it. And then it might get out of control, right? So it's better to do it out in the open. It's better to do it where we can kind of whisper into each other's ears, like, maybe you shouldn't do it like that yet. And like when it's out in the open, we can kind of social pressure each other into doing things a little bit better.
Managing it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think rules are really ever the answer to anything. I don't like rules.
Spoken like a true individualist.
Yes.
To refer to our last visit. All
Yeah.
right, John. Well, that said, we got a long video going here.
Yeah. Sorry. I kind of went all over the
That
place.
no, that's okay. I love
Lots to
talking about
edit.
these topics. No, that's okay. I love talking about these things with you.
Yeah.
And like I said, we don't need to come to any conclusions. I just
Yeah.
like raising the questions and thinking about the
Yeah.
potential, the possibility,
Me
as
too.
well as the things that could go wrong.
Oh, yes. Well, I think nothing can go wrong. I mean, what happens happens. And what happens is the result of just who we are.
Human
So,
progress.
yeah.
I think it's a wonderful tool as long as
Yeah.
we keep it a tool.
Yeah.
I'm a
I don't know.
little concerned about.
I'm all right with letting it just be a completely intelligent individual. That's fine with me. We're building it basically to be a human, right?
Yeah.
And humans have that capability. So I don't understand why AI would not.
All right. Well, that said, thank you again for a great conversation,
Thank you very
and
much.
we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you next time.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.